All right, back here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. And our state of Iowa has been one of the battlegrounds on the for the Convention of States movement here over the last couple of years. And so they're coming to our state next week, right as I'm leaving it, actually, to go do the Tim Pool show. Also, it's an opportunity for us to pick the brain of one of the smartest people I've had a chance to get to know in this business since I started in it. Michael Farris has worn many hats in our movement over the years, and now one of them has the Convention of States logo on it. Michael, it's good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Steve, it's great to see you. Glad to be with you.
Let's table the Convention of States talk for a few minutes because my audience is very well versed on that. Okay, but we'll hit it for sure. I want to have a broader conversation with you and pick your brain about where we are. And I am a believer, and this frankly ties into Convention of States. As I've said to, who's a guy who's become a good friend of mine, Mark Meckler, who's your mucky muck over there. I've said to him on our show and privately before, I used to hear Phyllis Schlafly's arguments against this and was sympathetic to them because the idea that if you're going to throw a Hail Mary pass, it can't be intercepted is just not true. It can be. So that's why you don't throw a Hail Mary pass in the second quarter of the game. Okay, you throw it at the end of the game when if you're behind on the scoreboard and if the game ends, you lose. And I think on a broad level, regardless of someone's individual perspective on the Convention of States, I think that's where we are. Mike, in the Arkansas State Legislature yesterday, a man was asked while dressed as a woman, do you have a penis? And I frankly thought it was one of the most insightful questions I have seen in quite some time, which I think speaks to where we are right now, brother. I think the 2-minute warning, at the very least, the 2-minute warning in the game has sounded, Mike, or am I blowing this out of proportion?
I don't think so. One of the cultural signals that just sent me as close to the edge as I can get is drag queen story hours in libraries with little kids. That one just takes the cake. It's amazing what's going on. I think that we are in a do or die kind of moment from a governmental sense. I don't say the same thing in all sectors of life but we have to remember that life in America, in this country, is bigger than the government. But the government's teetering on the edge of complete collapse. As we, the New York Times said, I think it was yesterday, that we're headed for another $19 trillion in debt in the next 10 years. That's getting us up in the $50 trillion range. That's enough just economically. If it wasn't for the moral crisis, it wasn't for the freedom crisis. But I have more hope because of, frankly, the passage of the parable of the persistent widow, when it says, Jesus commends her and says, and when I return, we'll have faith on the earth, which means that our job as believers is to consistently be demanding justice in the face of injustice. And on that basis, on the basis of the promises of God, I have hope. On the basis of what's going on around us from a human perspective, I'm with you. Mm-hmm.
I have articulated to our audience what I kind of think are the meta stakes we're playing for right now. I think that we are, to me, the low bar is the end of Western civilization, or as it used to be known, basically Christendom. That's the minimal stakes I think we're playing for. And if you know your history, what predated Western civilization or Christendom, you're looking at Druids, you're looking at Thor worship, Odin's son. You're talking about, sort of a technocratic, a dark ages without a bubonic plague of people starving and getting poisoned by rat feces because of modern technology. But it's technocratic. It's governed by ESG, social credit scores. You have on the outside, you have the accoutrements of modernity, but they're all controlled, pardon me, by central hubs of power within government to, electric cars. So the amount of distance you can drive and where you can go. They have control of essentially everything. Basically, China is to me, that's the minimum stakes. And it's possible we are living in kind of an end of days type of scenario. Is that nuts?
It's not nuts, but not by any means. I mean, the everything you describe is real. It's not imagined. You're not basing your ideas on those things. But I mean, I go back to the spiritual. When we're surrounded by forces of darkness, we have to look up and see the forces of God that are also arrayed against the enemy. Mm-hmm. And so we have hope. We have a reason for hope. I've been, in situations where I've been up against the wall in the battle for homeschool freedom, for example. For 25 years, government officials said it's not lawful for you to homeschool. The most powerful group in the country said you can't do this. So we're going to oppose you in every state legislature, and they had all the power that they needed in all the legislatures. But one by one, I was there on the front row when we won, and we can't explain that from human perspective alone. God's perspective is a big part of it. So, in fact, it's central to it. So I'm a mixture of realism and hope based on the combination of what I can see with my eyes and then what I can see with the eyes of faith.
Amen to that, because the hope to me is these are very clarifying times.
Yeah.
And you know me, I'm an odd bird. I don't mind clarity even when it's bad. Most people hate it because it usually is bad. Okay. And so most of us as a species avoid clarity. I just like knowing what the truth is. And so if the clarity means we're down to basically a Gideon's fleece here of water slurpers, and it's only a few that's left to stand up against the spirit of the age, I'm okay with that. I'd rather know who's on my team than keep getting shanked in the back by people wearing my jersey. So we live in an odd time. I just had Naomi Wolf on our show. She's been on here several times the last few years. The Clinton administration, ambassador of feminism, and now she does shows with Steve Bannon. It is truly a time of odd bedfellows, but that's what clarity provides. And I'd rather know who's willing to stand in the gap and fight, even if it is Naomi Wolf and not maybe a lot of the people that I have bought the books for or voted for in the past. I'd rather know that now before it really goes down.
Well, I agree with that. The Republican Party, as an example, has developed a pattern of saying one thing and doing another, and that's the opposite of clarity. That's deviousness, and it's But there are people within the party. There are people. There are certain breaths of fresh air.
Sure.
Ron DeSantis. I mean, I heard him speak again about a week ago, and a breath of fresh air because he says what he means. He doesn't hold any punches. He says it with excellence. And so, I mean, I view him as a breath of fresh air and a source of hope. But all that to say, no one person, even if they're elected president of the United States, is going to solve all of our problems. We have a bigger set of problems, and legally and politically, we need to be doing everything we possibly can to make the changes that we can and hold on to freedom for the foreseeable future, to do whatever is within our power.
So this is a good way to segue to the specific conversation about Convention of States. Because beyond just my own diagnosis of the lateness of the hour, and I think it's time now to start at least practicing the Hail Mary pass, if not getting ready to throw it. On top of that, I think there is a secondary and very constructive place for this initiative, in that because of the what you said about the Republican Party in general, with a few limited exceptions, our people are increasingly feeling as if they lack agency, they lack representation, that when they vote, they'll be lucky if their votes actually get counted. And then if they do count, the people they'll often elect will make them not count once they get into office anyway. So what is the point? And when you spread a level of hopelessness to people who own about 300 million guns, I know you've read history books, Mike. You know how that usually ends, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I prefer that to not end that way. I like being the ugly American and having pizza delivered and taking time off to watch the NCAA tournament. I prefer to not have that nihilistic zero-sum end. But for that to happen, I think we've got to give our people affirmative, constructive places where they still feel like they have a voice and can initiate change. And I think this might be one of the last peaceable options on the table to aggressively have the average person still feel like they have agency and a voice for radical but peaceable change in the country.
Well, that's exactly why I went to Mark Meckler about 10 years ago and urged him to join with me to start the Convention of States project, because Article 5 was given to us by the founders for just this time, Frankly, it should have been used 50, 60, 70 years ago, but especially now it's needed. And that is that George Mason stood up on the floor of the convention and said there's going to be a day when the federal government abuses its authority. And when that happens, we can't depend on Congress to propose amendments to the Constitution to rein in federal abuses of power. That has to come from the states. And so his proposal was adopted nem com, meaning without debate. Everybody said, like, duh, yeah, that's right. And they added a state controlled method of amending the Constitution just so that we can rein in the abuse of power by Congress. I testified in the legislature of Kansas yesterday, and there was an opponent there, and the chairman of the committee said, so what's your plan? What are you going to do to stop all these abuses of power? And I mean, in context, it was pretty clearly a pro-Convention of States comment by the chairman, so I was encouraged by that. But that's the deal. This is a plan to stop the abuse of federal power. And it's like having a kid that's 250 years old and the parents never disciplined them once. Article 5 is the discipline method for the child, called the government of the United States, to be disciplined by the parents, that is, the people in the states. We have the authority to do this, and we need to take that authority and use it properly for the first time in American history.
So where is this at now in total around the country? How much progress has been made?
There are 19 states that have adopted the Convention of States resolution that does three things. It gives us a chance to adopt amendments on these three subjects: proposing fiscal restraints on the federal government, term limits on federal officials, and reductions of federal power and jurisdiction. So anything in that zone is germane. Anything on any other area, like reducing our rights, is not germane and would not be permitted under the convention. So 19 states, we hope that Iowa or Wyoming, both are in progress. New Hampshire's in progress, made some progress along the way this year. And there are a few others, but we're hoping to get to the low 20s this year. We need 34 states in order to have the convention.
I've heard the argument from people I adore and have an immense amount of respect for that this, given the condition of the people, this is probably not the best time to give them this much power. And I say this as a guy, I'm a total depravity kind of guy. That's exactly, it's because the condition of the people that we've got to throw this Hail Mary pass, in my opinion, right now. That's the urgency of the hour. This is maybe the last chance that Samuel Adams' small, committed, and organized minority can actually do an end run as the Visigoths come over the wall here, because I don't see us building some critical mass of consensus. I mean, we can't even get Anthony Fauci held accountable for obvious crimes against humanity. So the idea that there's going to be a systemic mass consensus of sanity, barring revival, I don't see that happening. I think it's because of the condition of the people that maybe this provides an opportunity for that small, committed minority to organize themselves in a way to push back as the Visigoths come over the wall here. Well,
the people that wrote the Constitution agreed with you that all men are sinners. And they wrote Article 5 with the assumption that it was going to be sinners that were going to be doing this, not saints. And what they wanted was one group of sinners, the states, deciding how much power the other group of sinners, Congress, should have. They didn't like the idea that Congress could decide its own power. And so, it's the question of not where are the saints we're going to get, is which sinners do you want to decide how much power Congress should have? I want somebody other than those sinners in Washington, D.C. I want the states to decide that. Are they going to be saints? No. Will there be some decent people? Will there be some good, honorable people? Yeah, I believe so. Will there be some people with some foresight? Yeah, I believe so. But it still is made for sinful men. Our government was created on that assumption. Checks and balances, federalism, levels of power, all those things were under the theme of we're not going to give any agency of power too much government, or to any agency of government too much power, because sinful men should never be trusted with too much power.
Well said, brother. Where can people go to follow the progress, find out where their state is at, and get involved if they want to? Conventionofstates.com is the website, and urge your people to go.
And we're going to have an event in Iowa next Monday, and they can go on the website and get the details for that. And we'd love to see them if they're in Iowa. And we're going all over the country. I know you are all over the country now. And so, just check the website. We have events going and testimony and legislatures going in many, many parts of the country right now.
Good to see you again, Mike. It's been too long, brother. God bless you. Okay. Take care.
Thanks, Steve. God bless.
You bet.